Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Brentford Podcast with myself, Daniel, where today we'll be looking back over familiar problems at the Gtech at the weekend as the Bees came unstuck against European challengers Aston Villa. Just before we get going, guys, we're a brand new company, so we're looking for your support this season and beyond as we look to bring you the best and most in-depth coverage across the entire network. Whether this is a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting platform or a recommendation to your friends, we are very grateful for any support that we are able to receive. So let's get stuck straight into this one. Another disappointing afternoon at the Gtech. It seems to be becoming the common theme at the moment, just as our away form has turned itself around. In terms of team news, Christian Norgard returned, which was always going to be a boost to the side. And we saw Matthias Jensen back on the bench. I think with Jensen in particular, he's not been at his best this season. He's had probably his most injury-disrupted season at Brentford so far. All I want to see from him now is to, remain injury-free, maybe get back into the team, maybe that midfield three of Norgard, Jensen and Damsgaard. I'm hoping we can see that at times this season for the remaining games. And hopefully he can get back to somewhere close to his best, because when he's at his best, he provides goals, he provides assists. And he, alongside Mikael Damsgaard, I would expect to be the most creative players in the side. And at times, in these types of games, we need all the creativity we can get, because we've struggled for ideas again a little bit here, particularly in the second half, when we had a lot of possession. We appeared on top, but we didn't really create a lot out of it. In terms of the rest of the substitutes bench, there were still more blows, which probably doesn't surprise Brentford fans by this point. There was no Michael Coyote, who was suffering with a minor injury. That meant Bioniq continued in the side at centre-back alongside Nathan Collins, as Christopher Ajer had to stay at right-back. Bioniq did okay, I think, here. Certainly much better than he did against Everton. It's good to see. I think I still really, really like Bioniq as a player. He's done a lot for Brentford. Maybe, and I do definitely think when Van den Berg comes back, Bioniq probably steps aside again. And maybe I do think he plays maybe the Ben Mee role next season. But I'm pleased to see him having a decent game again. There was also no Fabio Carvalho, who dislocated his shoulder in training. What is going on? What are we doing in training? He had surgery on this, so will likely be out now for some weeks, which is another blow, because if you look at our depth options in recent weeks when we haven't had Jensen in the side, then Fabio Carvalho has been the obvious attacking substitute that we've got available to bring on, and we don't have that option anymore. When you look at the likes of Marcus Rashford and Donyell Malen coming off the bench for Aston Villa, I think that is the key difference between the two sides, especially in this game. Ewan Morgan was on the bench again, scored lots for the B team. If we need to chase the game, I'm not suggesting that this will necessarily work, but should Thomas Frank at least try something different? Should he try some of these younger players? He's on the bench for a reason. We obviously have high hopes for him. Could he make a difference? Could we at least try and see if he makes a difference? Because I thought towards the end of this game in particular, we were really struggling for ideas, lots of balls into the box, but no real end product. And the likes of Mings in defence were able to deal with this every single time. Talking of Aston Villa, their main team news was that Robin Olsen was in goal over Emi Martinez, which was a blow to them. But did Brentford test him enough? Did we put enough pressure on him, particularly at set pieces and situations like that? I'm not too sure. I thought early on, maybe when we did the high press, I thought Villa had some problems playing out of the back, but we just did not really sustain that, which is a bit of a shame. I think whenever a side is putting out their second choice keeper, although Olsen is more experienced, certainly more experienced than Valdemarson, could we have done a bit more to test him, given that he's not fresh and he's not playing a lot of minutes this season. There was no Marco Asensio on the bench for Aston Villa either, despite his goal-scoring form for Villa. Whether him and Martinez had knocks and were just being treated as a precaution for their European game, which is on Wednesday evening, I don't know. But again, on the face of it, it is a little bit of a boost to us There were fewer changes, though, than I expected from their European exploits in midweek. Only, I think, 2 or 3 changes, and one of them was Jacob Ramsey coming in, who's not a bad replacement at all and was their first choice in that position for a long time this season before Marcus Rashford came in. Ollie Watkins continued his great form against Brentford, got booed every time he touched the ball, but had the last laugh, ran into the corner with the Aston Villa fans this time in a more low-key celebration. The likes of Disasi, Konsa and Mings I thought were also very, very good in defence. We'll go on to talk about the penalty shouts on Disasi's challenges on Sharda, but I thought as a collective defensive unit, they were dominant in defence. And like I said, they just dealt with the crosses that we put in from start to finish. And like I said, again, the likes of Rashford, also Matty Cash and Donyell Marlon off the bench, I think that's the biggest gulf between the sides at the moment. You know, when we need to change a game, we don't have those options on the bench currently. I thought Jensen came on too late. I thought he should have come on earlier. But aside from that, I do sympathise with Thomas Frank to an extent that we don't have a lot of options. The likes of Brian and Bumo was not quite on it again, and we just don't have alternatives if plan A is not working. So maybe we should be trying the youngsters. Maybe we should at least be giving them an opportunity, given that we have not too much to play for in the league, and we really needed a goal in this one to try and bridge the gap between us and the teams challenging for Europe. But there's every chance, and it's more likely than not that wouldn't have worked either. So I do understand Thomas Frank's likely frustration, and that is the difference between the sides. The substitutes that Aston Villa were able to bring on. After the break, then, I will be going into how the game looked itself, play by play.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of your daily Brentford podcast. Let's get into the game itself then. I thought Villa in the first half were largely on the front foot and Brentford sat quite deep. And I'm not too sure why. I'm not sure whether that was the intention. Of course, in these types of games against quality opposition, the other team can do something to cancel you out. We've got to recognise that they will have times when they're on top in the game and they will have a period of dominance. And during those times, maybe it is the best thing for us to do to sit back and soak that up and try not to concede in those times. However, I did think early on when we were high pressing, we were a bit unlucky not to get a break. As I mentioned at the beginning, with Olsen in goal, maybe it unsettled Villa's defence a little bit. There was almost a defensive mix-up when Villa were trying to play out from the back. Wissa couldn't quite get control of it to tap it home. But that shows what we can do with a high press. It shows what we do in high pressure situations. Maybe we weren't confident that we could handle the transitions if Villa play through it. Maybe we just weren't able to keep that up for the majority of the first half. I don't know, but that's just something I wanted to note to begin with. But after that, I thought it was mainly Aston Villa on top. Tyrone Mings in particular, I think should have done better with the free kick opportunity. Poor defending. From Brentford's point of view, if that had gone in, Tyrone Mings, luckily for us, didn't get a clean contact on it. Otherwise, you'd back him to score there. If he was a striker, I think you'd back him to score there, definitely. Pinnock didn't seem aware of the danger behind him. Shortly after, Pinnock again almost turned into his own net from a Tielemans header across goal, but very good clearance in the end. He's got to be very careful with those ones. You see them so often. Defenders turning it into their own net because they're not able to clear it wide or high enough. So we got away with it a little bit in the first half without giving away anything clear cut. If we're looking back to the Everton game, I thought we gave away more clear cut opportunities there. But in the first half, there was a little bit of a tinge of disappointment that we, weren't quite in the game as much as we wanted to be. With a home side, Villa have a poor record after European competition. Maybe we could take advantage a bit more. Maybe we could be more on the front foot, which we wasn't, unfortunately, in that first half. The second half began in more of the same way. We started very poorly, and I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the first time I'm saying it this season that Brentford have started the second half slowly. I think it is a little bit of a problem at times, and Watkins found himself out wide in open space. I'm not sure where Christopher Ayer was. He was out of position, but then given that Watkins is on that left-hand side, he's got so much space. Ayer's out of position. Collins needs to move over. Pinnock needs to move over. KRP needs to move over. The whole back three need to move across to cover their teammate who's out of position, and that wasn't done. Watkins was wide open, allowed to bear down on goal. Collins went to go for the block, but was never close enough. He was not close enough to engage. He's got to do more to put pressure on Ollie Watkins here, and it took a deflection off him, went right through Mark Flecken, and I don't know whether to suggest whether Mark Flecken should have done better with this. What I will say is I think it's very disappointing for any goalkeeper to be beating at their near post, particularly if it goes through their legs, if it goes through the keeper. Flecken will probably be disappointed with that one. I think you can use a caveat that it took a deflection. He may well have saved it if it went to his intended destination, but we've got to be doing better in these situations, and it is very avoidable, this goal, in terms of Collins and the initial engagement, and then maybe Flecken should have done better with the save. But, like we say, with goalkeepers, he saved us against Everton with the 3 1-on-1s. He made another 1-on-1 save in the second half against Watkins in this one. If a goalkeeper, though, makes a mistake, often it is costly to the extent of the goal, which it was here. Let me know if I'm being a bit too harsh on him, given that it was a deflection, but I think maybe just close your legs. You could have done a bit better with that one. It was incredibly lucky not to concede another goal 1 minute later with a very close offside. Watkins works his way into the box, manages to spray it across to Morgan Rogers, who taps home. And at that point, I was thinking our old mentality is starting to kick in, a poor start to the second half and 2 goals conceded in a matter of minutes. We're not able to stem the tide at times when momentum's against us. Just take a minute or two to regain composure, regain control of the ball, and gain control of the game. And maybe, you wouldn't be in those situations. But I think we were incredibly lucky on that occasion with VAR. I think in a world without VAR, as much criticism it gets, I don't think tight offsides like this would get picked up. Because it was virtually level. There was a matter of inches determining that he was offside. So I think without VAR, it would have been 2-0 to Villa, and it would have been very, very difficult to get back into the game at that stage. But as it was, it wasn't given, and that riled the crowd up a bit, and that got them back on side. And we looked better after this. We had a lot more possession. We had a lot more territory. Aston Villa were quite content to sit in a low block of their own, but we found that incredibly difficult to break down. And I've got to talk about the penalty shouts in the second half. They would have been, on another day, our route back into this game and possibly winning the game. And on another day, we could have potentially seen 2 penalties given. The first one, Disasi in defence takes out both Matty Cash and Kevin Schade. He did slip into the challenge, but I think that's irrelevant when determining whether it's a penalty. If you slip and you completely take someone out in the box, it is a penalty. This is how the game works. It doesn't have to be intentional. There's nothing in the rules to say it has to be intentional. He's got to there was some talk, especially on Match of Day, about where the ball is going and whether Sharda gets to that ball. But again, I think if it's a foul, it's a foul. If you take out someone in the box, regardless of whether you are going to get to the ball or not. And I think there is a chance that Sharda was going to get to the ball, given his pace, and the ball wasn't that far ahead of him. I don't see how that's relevant, though. If you're taken out into the box, I think, it's more likely than not to be a penalty. And I think, like the second one as well, I think it's one of those situations where if it's given, it doesn't get overturned, but for whatever reason, VAR didn't deem it a complete and obvious error, likely for the things I've mentioned, and they didn't give it ultimately. Unlucky on Disasi's part because he did slip. He didn't mean to take out certainly his own teammate as well, but these things happen and it's unfortunate. And I guess this is a frustration because on another day with another referee who does give that, we'd be 1-1 all or 2-1 up with those penalties and potentially on course to win the game. And that's the frustration. It's not consistent because VAR will only intervene if it's a clear error. And they would not have intervened if the decision had gone the other way either. The second shout was a push again from Disasi on Sharda. I think the clearer thing to me on this one was there was clearly a hand movement from Disasi towards Sharda's chest, shoving him out the way. And again, you've seen them given. And, potentially VAR could get involved there, on the basis that there was a clear hand on his chest, pushing him out the way. I think Disasi was lucky. I think he had a really, really good game overall, but I think he was lucky on these occasions not to at least give away one penalty. But like I said, I think there was not enough for VAR to overturn either incident. I think they would have been both given, though, if they were given on the pitch. I don't think they would have been overturned either. Sharda, I want to talk about him a little bit himself. Obviously, he got himself into positions to be in the place of potentially winning a penalty or two. He had a few half chances throughout, had an effort which was saved by Olsen. There were a few times where the ball was arriving to his feet in the box. He spent a little bit of time to get the ball down. Didn't quite have enough time to get a shot away, but I certainly think out of our front three, he was probably the most lively of the three. Which isn't saying too much. I thought Wissa and Bumo had quite poor games, but I just wanted to mention Sharda because I think since the turn of the year, I think he's been a bit more consistent and he's shown a bit more what we want to see week to week, even if he hasn't been on fire every single week. I think he's put in higher level of average performances. So I hope that continues, and I hope that we do see that going forward, then it doesn't go back to being a bit hot and cold like it was before. In terms of Brentford's other chances, our best chance came from Keane Lewis Potter's effort off the post on the edge of the box. Something we don't usually try very much. We don't usually try long range efforts. We usually look to make the extra pass and find a clearer opportunity. It was unlucky again, hit the post. KLP, I've criticised him this season for maybe putting too many of his effort straight at the keeper. I mean, if that found the corner, it would have definitely been his best goal for the club. I thought he was man of the match overall as well. I thought he was very good going forward and defensively, as he has been. And I'm convinced at this point he's a left back. And if Thomas Tuchel is to perhaps consider playing a back five for England, could KLP be an option at left wing back? I doubt it. But with Justin Cottrane, the Brentford coach, now involved in his setup, maybe he'll be giving him a few words as to whether KLP could be involved in the squad, and it would be great if we saw another Brentford player after Ivan Toney last summer become involved with England. Otherwise, second half, I thought we did not find enough ways to attack. Lots and lots of crosses towards Wissa, but Disasi and Mings dealt with it every time. Again, a lack of creativity, particularly from set pieces. We tend to get a lot of corners because we put a lot of balls into the box. Normally, Mings or Disasi win those duels, but often they head it out for a corner. But I just don't get excited when we're getting set pieces at the moment. When we have corner situations, can we put more pressure on the goalkeeper, considering he's their second choice? Can we make it really difficult and horrible for them to defend? Can we try new, different creative routines? I thought Damsgaard especially hit the first man on far too many occasions, and it's just disappointing because we used to be a team who stood out for our set piece ability, and we're not really doing that this season. Maybe from throw-ins, I think we're doing well defensively, so Keith Andrews has to take some credit for how he set us up defensively from corners, but we need to do much, much better going forward, I think, and that is the real disappointment. We need to also find different ways to attack. Can we find Damsgaard? I thought Damsgaard was, unlike himself at the weekend, he was quite quiet, struggled to get in the game, but can we find him in pockets? Can we get him to play those intricate passes through the lines? We can't always look to cross it without a target man type of Ivan Toney or Igor Thiago up front. We've got to do something a little bit different, I think, and that is the frustration from this one. Ollie Watkins, as Brentford looked for a winner, was through again late on, tried to dink Mark Flecken, but he stood up tall and he saved it again, just like he did against Beto when we played Everton. And I think he's been working on his one-on-one ability. I think in the past he used to go to ground a bit early, and that's perhaps why Watkins looked to dink it, but Flecken stood up tall. Flecken caught it. It made it look like a really, really poor attempt to finish from Watkins, which it wouldn't have looked like if Flecken did go down. It would have looked like a clever finish. And I just want to shout him out for that. I think he's been working on his one-on-ones, and I think he's had a good season. Although I said he maybe could have done better for the goal, he made up for it a little bit with that save. And I think definitely in the last couple of weeks, we've seen another side to his game in terms of his pure shot stopping in front of goal. That will do for today. Then Brentford looking unlikely, I would say, particularly given our fixtures coming up now that we will break into that European competition. I think the gap is just too big and we don't have the consistency to reach that. So not a lot to play for. I'd like to see us really go for some of these games in the coming weeks to show what we can do and start perhaps preparing for next season. I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that we're out of the cup as well because that would have been really something to go for this season, particularly looking at the team still in the FA Cup. A lot of the big guns out. So it's a shame, but, we've got to also take stock. It's been a good season. It could have been a better season. There's still some games to go. We'll see how we get on and we'll see if we can do anything, but I think it's very much unlikely at this stage. So that'll do for today. Thank you for listening to the Daily Brentford podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And once again, we would be extremely grateful for your support as this will enable us to go bigger and better moving forwards. Daily Brentford can be found on X, Instagram and TikTok under the handle at GSPN Brentford. And we'll be back again on Friday where we'll be previewing our visit to the South Coast at the weekend as we face another high-flying team in Bournemouth. Until then, from myself, thank you for being with me.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.